On the morning of December the 1st in 1987, a man crossed Ilkley Moor. He was carrying a camera as he walked to the top of the hill. He was carrying a compass. And somewhere in the fog above the town, he saw something move across the hillside. He raised the camera. He took one photograph. When the image was developed, something was there, blurred, dark, indistinct, but present. What it was, no one has ever been able to say for certain. This is the story of the goblin in the fog, the story of a possible photograph of a real alien. Before there was an alien on Ilkley Moor, there was the moor itself. High above the town, the land rises into gritstone, heather, peat and open sky. It is part of the wider landscape known as Rombold's Moor, a place where wind moves freely, mist gathers quickly, and traces of ancient human presence remain written into the stone. Across the moor are hundreds of prehistoric carvings, small hollows pecked into rock, rings, cups, channels, grooves. No one can say with certainty what all of them meant. Some may have marked the routes across the landscape. Some may have held ritual or symbolic meaning. Some may have been connected with water, burial, territory, stars, or the movement of the sun. Elsewhere on the moor stands the 12 Apostles, an embanked stone circle believed to date from the Bronze Age. The stones visible today would have been moved, damaged and re-erected over time. They are not a pristine survival from prehistory, yet they still possess the peculiar gravity of an ancient gathering place. Low stones standing together on high ground, watching nothing, waiting for no one, and around them the moor carries stories. The wider landscape takes its name from Rombold, a legendary giant said to have crossed these hills. In one tale, Rombold quarrelled with his wife and stamped upon a great rock while fleeing from her anger, splitting it apart and creating the famous cow and calf formation. In another, stones fell from his wife's apron and became part of the rough, boulder-strewn landscape of the moor. Here, stones become footprints. Boulders become the debris of giants. And so, Ilkley Moor was never empty. Long before strange lights were reported above it, the landscape was already crowded with invisible meanings. By the late 20th century, older supernatural interpretations had given way to new language. People no longer looked into the sky and saw omens. Instead, they saw unidentified flying objects. The inhabitants of lonely places were no longer necessarily fairies, boggarts, spirits, or goblins. They could be visitors from other worlds. The vocabulary changed, but the experience remained. And this was not the first time West Yorkshire had produced a photograph of something that refused to remain inside an ordinary explanation. In 1917, two young cousins living in the village of Cottingley, only a few miles south of Ilkley, photographed what they claimed were fairies at the bottom of the garden. Small winged creatures among flowers and leaves. The photographs were examined. They convinced Arthur Conan Doyle. They travelled through newspapers, magazines and books across the world. In later life, both cousins admitted that the fairies in the first 4 photographs had been drawings held in place with hatpins. But they never completely agreed about the 5th. Elsie said that all 5 had been staged. Frances continued to insist that the final image was genuine. She maintained that something unusual had been seen beside the beck, even if the famous dancing fairies had been created for the camera. And 70 years later, another photograph of a small, apparently non-human figure would emerge from the same corner of West Yorkshire. Again, experts could examine the image, but they could not make the mystery disappear entirely. The witness became known publicly as Philip Spencer, but that was not his real name. He was a retired police constable moved north with his family from London. He lived in Ilkley and wished to protect his identity. On Tuesday, the 1st of December 1987, Spencer left his house in Ilkley at around 7 o'clock in the morning. His plan was to cross the moor on foot and visit his father-in-law in East Moreton, a village on the other side. He carried a camera, reportedly hoping to photograph wildlife and whatever the moor might offer that morning. The camera was a Prince Mastermatic loaded with 400 ASA Kodak film. He also carried a compass. The weather was foggy. Visibility was changeable. This was not the moor as a grand open view. This was the moor as a shifting, uncertain place. Spencer took a route high over the hill. The ground was steep in places. It was not an easy place to move through quickly. And somewhere ahead of him near the rocks he saw a figure. It was coming down towards him, small, green, humanoid. Arms too long, head too large. Body was awkward and goblin-like. It did not look like an ordinary walker. It did not move like one either. Spencer later described the figure as raising an arm. At first he took the gesture as a warning. But the gesture is one of the things that makes the case feel so strange. It could mean greeting, it could mean farewell. Spencer reacted quickly. He raised his camera and took a photograph. Then he shouted after it, and followed. Spencer went after the thing he could not explain. The figure disappeared from sight. And then, according to Spencer, something else happened. From the top of the hill, a craft emerged. He described it as 2 cylinder-like discs, or 2 saucer forms joined together. It rose suddenly. It moved fast. It was there, then it was gone. He did not photograph it. This would become one of the obvious questions around the case. If he had a camera, why not take a shot? Spencer's answer was simple. He was stunned by the sudden appearance. The craft was gone before he could respond. Then came the decision that changed the morning. Spencer did not continue towards East Moreton. He turned back. He made his way down from the moor into Ilkley. And when he reached the town clock, he was shocked. It was 10 o'clock. He had left at around 7. He had expected the time to be much earlier. Somewhere on the moor the morning seemed to have opened and swallowed more time than he could account for. He also discovered that his compass no longer behaved as it should. The needle appeared to have reversed. North becomes south. South had become north. A small certainty had been broken. Spencer then went to a 1-hour photographic processing shop. He used up the remaining frames on the roll by photographing ordinary buildings. Then he handed in the film. When the photographs were developed, the figure was there. Not clearly. Not enough to settle anything, but enough to trouble everything. A small shape on the moor. The Ilkley Moor photograph is not spectacular in the usual sense. Its outline is blurred, as if the camera caught it at precisely the wrong moment, or precisely the right one. Look at it one way and it resembles a small alien. Look again and it could be more ambiguous, a model perhaps. Well, it would be a long way to walk to bring such a model up a steep moorland. And Spencer did not immediately run to the newspapers. He did not present himself as a man who had photographed an alien, which speaks to his character. Instead, after a few days, he went to a library and searched for someone who investigated UFO reports. He found the address of Jenny Randalls and made contact. Randalls was already an experienced British UFO researcher. She discussed the case with Peter Huff, who became heavily involved in the investigation. Later, according to case accounts, Arthur Tomlinson also became involved. Spencer invited Tomlinson to the moor and offered to show him the photograph and the place where the event had happened. On the first visit, Tomlinson arrived late and the moor was already pitch black in darkness. A second visit was made with Peter Huff, during which Spencer was interviewed near the location. The ground was high, steep and awkward. If the photograph were a hoax, then someone had to arrange the figure in a specific place at a specific time on a foggy winter morning. A staged event on open moorland that's steep would have required a lot of effort. And Spencer himself remained difficult to reduce to an obvious hoaxer. He was a retired police constable. He kept his real identity private. He does not appear to have gained much from the encounter. There was no great commercial reward, no public persona built upon the story. No easy motive sitting in the middle of the case with a flag in its hand. The photograph was examined. Experts reportedly concluded that the image had not been doctored in the simple sense. The figure appeared to have been present in the scene when the photograph was taken. But that does not tell us what the figure was. A genuine photograph can still show an ordinary subject. Cottingley had already taught that lesson. A camera can faithfully record something staged or something misunderstood, or something that becomes stranger because we cannot quite see it. There were questions. The image was blurry. The frame was underexposed. The figure could not be identified. And when the lighting in the photograph was considered, some felt it looked as though the picture had been taken later than Spencer's original timing suggested. It became part of the mystery. Because Spencer had not only reported a strange figure, he had reported missing time. If the photograph was taken later than expected, perhaps that was not a contradiction. Perhaps it was the very thing the story was trying to explain. The photograph did not close the case, it opened it, and inside that opening, the missing morning waited. At first, the missing time was simply an absence. Spencer had no elaborate memory of being taken aboard a craft. No detailed account of medical procedures, no formally formed abduction narrative. There was only the problem of the clock. He had left early, he had seen the figure, he had seen the craft. He had returned to town, and somehow it was 10 o'clock. This is where the case begins to shift from a strange sighting into something larger. The photograph was one mystery, the missing time was another, the compass added a third. The compass was later examined by Dr. Edward Spooner, an electrical engineer at the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. It was possible to reverse the polarity of a compass, but the question was how and when it had happened. A simple tool designed to tell north from south had been confused. After hearing about the missing time, Peter Huff and Arthur Tomlinson suggested that Spencer undergo hypnotic regression. Spencer was apparently unsure at first. He was not presented as a man eager to embellish the story. He was worried about what might happen, but eventually he agreed. The regression took place on the 16th of March 1988 at Arthur Tomlinson's house. It was conducted by Dr. Jim Singleton, a clinical psychologist. And under hypnosis, the empty space in the morning began to fill. Spencer described seeing the small green figure coming down towards him. He said he could not move. He was paralyzed. The creature seemed to make him follow, not by walking, but through levitation. He was drawn across the moor towards a quarry. There he saw a silver disc-like craft. A door opened. Then everything went black. When Spencer became aware again, he was inside a brightly lit room. There were several of the small green beings around him. The light had no obvious source. A voice spoke inside his head. It told him not to be afraid. It instructed him to lie down on a table. Then came the examination. Spencer described something like a fluorescent tube of light being passed along his body. Like a scanner, a device moving over him, reading him, inspecting him. This was not the brutal horror of a monster story. It was stranger because it was clinical, cold, purposeful. Not cruelty, procedure. After the examination, Spencer was taken through the craft, a kind of ship tour. He looked through a window and realized he was no longer merely above the moor. He was in space. He could see the earth. He was shown another room. Inside was something like a massive gyroscope, a rotating engine or power source. His compass and camera were magnetically drawn towards it. This gave the story an internal explanation. The compass had not simply gone wrong. It had been affected by the machinery of the craft. Then Spencer was shown two films. The first showed catastrophe on Earth, starvation, pollution, war. A warning that humanity had to change course or face disaster. The second film was more personal. It showed Spencer his own future. And whatever he saw, it belonged to him alone. Then the memory ended. He was back on the moor. The strange morning resumed. The conscious mind remembered the figure, the craft, the photograph, the missing time. But not the journey inside. Not until the regression. This is where the story becomes both fascinating and difficult. Hypnosis does not give us a clean window into the past. Memory is not a locked room with a perfect recording inside it. It is alive, it changes, it rebuilds itself. It can become vivid without becoming accurate. A person can be sincere and mistaken at the same time. That does not mean Spencer was lying. It means that recovered memory is not the same as proof. Earlier that year, Whitley Strieber had published Communion. The book described his claimed encounters with small non-human beings and disturbing memories explored through hypnosis. It became a bestseller. Its cover, a narrow face dominated by enormous dark eyes, fixed a new image of the alien visitor within popular culture. And I remember that face from childhood. I found it reproduced in a book about famous UFO cases, one of those strange collections that gather together sources, abductions, photographs, vanished people, lights in the sky, and all the unresolved business of the late 20th century. As a child, that cover frightened me. There was something about it that did not feel like a monster. It felt calm, silent, watching. And perhaps that was worse. My grandfather, Stan Goosey, had books like that. Books about cryptids, UFOs, mysteries, disappearances, strange creatures, impossible sightings, and all the peculiar things that seem to gather around the edges of ordinary life. And he was also a natural storyteller, the sort of person that could make the world feel larger just by speaking about it. And looking back, I think those books, those stories, and that feeling of being allowed to wander were part of what started me on this path. The being on the cover of Communion did not resemble the greenish goblin-shaped figure from the Ilkley Moor case, but parts of the experience were already familiar: missing time, paralysis, medical intrusion, memories recovered under hypnosis. By the time Spencer underwent regression in March 1988, alien abduction had already a powerful cultural language. In Spencer's case, hypnosis did not create the whole event. The photograph already existed, the missing time had already been reported, the strange figure had already been seen. But the regression gave the experience a complete shape. A creature became a guide, the hill became a doorway, the lost hours became a journey, the compass became evidence of an engine, and the raised hand became something different. Not a warning, a goodbye. The story had learned how to explain itself. Now it seemed the story had followed him home, and with it came another category of figure in this account. Not alien, not ancient, human in appearance almost. On the evening of January the 15th, 1988, two men arrived at his home. The visitors appeared to be in their early 40s. They wore smart business suits. They displayed identification cards carrying the symbol of the Ministry of Defense. One introduced himself as David Jefferson. The other gave the surname Davies and said little. They claimed to have come to discuss Spencer's experience, but this was before the case had become public. Only a small number of people were said to know Spencer's real identity. Yet these men knew who he was. They knew where he lived. And according to Spencer, they knew about the photograph. The men remained in the house for around 50 minutes. Their behavior was strange. At one point, they appeared confused by an ordinary electric fire and asked how it worked. It's a tiny bizarre detail, but folklore of the Men in Black often contains moments like this, where the men have slightly off and weird behavior. A visitor who knows secret information but does not understand a household object. A man who appears official but not quite real. A stranger who looks human enough until the small details go wrong. The men asked Spencer about the encounter. They wanted to see the negative. Spencer told them it was not with him. Peter Huff had it. They tried to intimidate him into silence, and then at that point they left. Spencer had not seen how they arrived. He did not see them depart. Afterwards, he was shaken enough to contact Huff and consider ending the investigation. The following morning, Spencer said he received a call from someone claiming to represent a national newspaper. The caller knew his real name and address. But when checks were made with the newspaper, nobody seemed to know anything about it. Later, Huff contacted the Ministry of Defense, and their response was a denial. No officials had been sent to visit Spencer on that date. The identification described by Spencer did not match what was then in use. The names Jefferson and Davies were not confirmed. And so the men joined the figure in the photograph, present in the story, difficult to verify, official in appearance, unofficial in origin. They are often described as men in black. They knew who he was, they knew about the photograph. They arrived before the story had even reached the public. They brought the mystery down from the moor and into the living room. From fog and stone into electric light. The creature seemed too ancient for a spacecraft. The officials seemed too strange for an office. Each wore the expected uniform of its role. Neither wore it convincingly. A person travels alone into moorland. A small non-human figure appears. It gestures. The traveller follows. Time becomes unreliable. The witness returns changed or disturbed. Later, mysterious strangers arrive asking questions. Remove the language of spacecraft and medical examination and the structure becomes much older. People entering Fairy Hills lose time. Those who follow strange lights return late, changed, or unable to explain where they have been. Small beings appear at the edge of lonely paths. Warnings are given, secrets are kept. The traveller comes home carrying a story that ordinary life cannot comfortably absorb. This does not mean that aliens are fairies, nor does it mean that fairies were aliens. Those explanations merely exchange one mystery for another, but the resemblance matters. This was the territory explored by the French-born UFO researcher Jacques Vallée. In his 1969 book, Passport to Magonia, Vallée argued that modern UFO encounters should not be isolated from older traditions of contact with non-human beings. He was not simply claiming that fairies were aliens, his point was stranger than that. Across cultures and centuries, people have described encounters with beings who arrive from somewhere else. Sometimes from the sky, sometimes from beneath the earth. Sometimes from islands, hollow hills, invisible kingdoms, or luminous realms just beyond ordinary sight. They are often elusive, morally ambiguous, difficult to categorize. They abduct people, they distort time, they offer impossible journeys, they issue warnings. They leave witnesses confused, frightened, transformed, and often unable to prove what happened. Vallée noticed that the details changed with the age, the framework did not. In medieval Europe, the encounter might be described as a meeting with the fairies. In the 19th century, it might become an airship mystery. And in the 20th century, it became a spacecraft. The technology changed, the theatre changed, but the basic drama remains strangely familiar. A human being steps outside the ordinary world, something meets them there. And when they return, the explanation offered by their own culture rushes in to clothe the experience. The story speaks fluent UFO, but underneath, it still remembers the grammar of fairyland. That may be why the figure in the photograph feels so peculiar. It does not resemble the polished grey alien of modern cinema or modern culture. Instead, its body is awkward. It seems closer to a goblin, boggart, or moorland imp. Something primitive walking away from advanced machinery. A creature caught between categories, too folkloric for science fiction, too technological for a fairy tale. They appear at the edge of the path, they leave one blurred photograph, they vanish uphill. And they ask us what kind of world we think we are living in. Perhaps the real mystery of Ilkley Moor is not that it produced one strange photograph in 1987. It is that it was already creating strange stories long before Philip Spencer arrived. In 1878, Charles C. Smith published an account called Fairies at Ilkley Wells. The story came through John Dobson of Hollybank House, Ilkley, who had known the man at the centre of it, William Butterfield, the bathman at the Ilkley Spa Wells, or White Wells, on the moor itself. His job was to open the bathhouse early in the morning. One quiet midsummer morning he climbed the hill towards the old Roman wells. And when he reached the door he placed his key into the lock. But something was wrong. The key turned round and round without opening it. There was, he said, something uncanny about it. When the door finally gave way, Butterfield looked inside. The bath was full of little beings. They were small, lively, human-like. No more than 18 inches high or so the story goes. All green. They were splashing in the water, chattering in a language he could not understand, and when they saw him, they fled. Some scrambled over the walls, some tumbled over another in panic. Then they were gone. Butterfield searched for traces, he found nothing. The spa bathwater lay clear and still. He told no one for a long time. He worried that the sight might be some kind of omen. More than a century and a half later, another man climbed into the mist above Ilkley. He saw a small green figure on the hillside. He raised a camera and came back with a story nobody could quite explain. Maybe there were little green men in Ilkley all along. Maybe there still are. Not asking to be believed, not waiting to be explained, only reminding us that the unknown has always lived close by, in the hills, in the mist, in the water, and in the stories we carry home. This film is dedicated to my grandfather, Stan Goosey, who knew the world was stranger and larger than it looked, and who passed that feeling on.
A ship